This clip of the popular French folk song Au clair de la lune is the world's oldest known voice recording. It was done 165 years ago by a French inventor in the form of lines that were drawn on a paper covered in soot. This paper has been preserved at the Académie des Sciences in Paris since 1861. To find out how this recording was done and who did it, I am at the Académie des Sciences to meet Patrick Flandrin, who is a physicist and a member of this academy. Thank you very much for your time.
You're welcome.
What are we seeing on this paper?
What we are seeing is precisely the tracing of this voice recording. And this was done by Edouard-Leon Scott de Martinville, the French inventor of this device, which he called the phonautograph. And this device was something which was made by a barrel, a vibrating membrane. The vibrating membrane was transmitting the oscillation to a stylus, and the stylus was engraving, in some sense, the oscillation on this paper, which was rotating on a cylinder. And the purpose of this invention was not, as this will be the case 17 years later by Edison, to reproduce the sound. At that time, it was only some kind of stenography. And what was the project of Scott was really to read the words, or to read what was written by this stylus on the paper, and to infer from this reading the meaning of what has been recorded.
When was this discovery made, and how were these lines retransformed into sound?
For a long time, almost nobody was aware of the existence of this in the archives of the Academy of Sciences, except for some historians of sounds who were aware of the existence of this and who had the idea in 2008, explicitly, to come to the Academy of Science and to ask not only to see the tracings, but to scan them with very high resolution and transform them into some digital archive. And so when you do that, what you get is just numbers that you can process as you would do in signal processing. And this is what has been done in labs in the US, where, with a lot of effort, they transform these scans of the recordings of Scott into actual digital signals. And when you have the digital signals, you can play back them and you can just hear what was on this, in these recordings.
So this sound was played back 150 years after it was recorded. How remarkable is it?
It's really remarkable because nobody could imagine that this was existing. In some sense, if I had been aware of the existence of this, I would have loved to work on this, but I was totally unaware of the existence of this, because this is something which has to do with my field of expertise and my field of scientific research, which is signal processing. So I really appreciated the tour de force, in some sense, that the people made for turning this writing, this tracing into actual sounds, and hear, and it's very emotional to hear the voice of Scott de Martinville himself singing this song.
Who was Edouard-Leon Scott de Martinville?
Edouard-Leon Scott de Martinville was an outsider in the scientific landscape of the time. He was essentially a typographer and stenographer, but he was interested in this idea of doing some kind of effective way of having a stenographic system which would write words by themselves, as he said. And he was an inventor, but he has limited skills in invention, and it was not very good. He was kind of an amateur and not very good. So the first trials he made, the first time he tried to build this phonautograph, was not very successful. So to improve his device, he had the idea to approach a very good inventor, Rudolf Koenig, who was a specialist, especially with tuning forks and different devices in acoustics and so. And together, they built a very, very nice system, which was the actual phonautograph, who was able to make these recordings. And this was a huge step because it really made sense, not for the initial project of Scott, which was to read the words as the sentences just for looking at the tracing, because this was dead end and nobody could successfully achieve this goal, but to get this recording. And this is a way, the reason why more than 100 years later, this surfaced again and was a starting point from the recovering of these sounds.
What kind of correspondence did Scott de Martinville have with the Académie des Sciences regarding his invention?
There were different steps. First, in 1857, he sent a memoir expliciting what are the principles of phonautography, which was his invention, but this was done in the form of a sealed manuscript, which means that this was not supposed to be open until some time where he wanted to reveal the nature of the invention. What he did in 1861, and he did that because at that time he had a better device, which was done with Koenig, and he had nice tracing to present to the Academy. And so he sent all this tracing and asked for the opening of the sealed manuscript. But surprisingly, this was not to be of great interest to anybody. So this invention was not considered as he expected to be. It didn't get the credit he expected. And so he left partly the field until 1877, which was the year where the invention of Edison, the phonograph, was presented at a session in the Academy of Sciences. And at that time, of course, because there was not only the recording but also the playing back of the sound, this was a great shock and a huge surprise, and everybody was enthusiastic about that. Nobody recognized that many ingredients of the phonograph, that like the rotating cylinder, the vibrating membrane, the stylus, were part of the invention of Scott. He got no credit about that, and he was bitter about this lack of recognition. So he decided to completely leave the field. He wrote kind of testimony book, which was the last writing, and he died shortly after.